Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hey everyone, it's May. Oh my goodness, summer is sneaking up on us again. We want to get out to the beach, go out to the lake, go and do fun stuff. So let's keep doing some great work on ourselves and trying to stay healthy. So I want to thank my sponsors who brought this episode to us. Of course, Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com. They're doing great work for allowing us to monitor sugar and ketone levels. And again, they're just doing great things in the community. They're always out helping people, and they're a great company. So please support them. And also Health Code. Get Health, GETHLTH.com. Great vanilla shakes and chocolate shakes. If you go to their website, they have tons of recipes, tons of tips, tons of great information from Ben Bickman about how to be metabolically healthy. So continue to support these great companies, and I thank you for continuing to listen. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I just did the Low Carb MD podcast. So here we are, Life's Best Medicine. And we have one of my, these are heroes to me, Navy SEAL, Christopher Maher. Your story is amazing. I was going to go and give some background, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you went from being a Navy SEAL, working on your own stuff, and then becoming a holistic practitioner, Chinese medicine, being Zen, and working on stress and all these things. So welcome. Thanks for your service, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm happy to be here. It's we're finally in a world where, holistic and allopathic can meet up and have conversations, right? There was a place where there was this line in the sand. You're either Western or you're traditional. And great. I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to serve. I got to talk off camera with you about some other things that you're doing. The low carb what'd you call it? The low carb podcast?
MD.
Yeah, low carb MD. Just a little bit of the information that we went over really quickly was how everything fits together, meaning you can't just talk about nutrition anymore, right? You have to include everything. You have to include sleep. You have to include their communication. What are their survival-based strategies? How do they manage their upset? Talk therapy. Are they doing any breath work? You've got to look at the entire human. And the reason why we have to do that today is because we have complex stress, right? When my grandparents, born in the 20s, were moving around the world, life was quite simple, right? There was no EMFs. They got up same time in the morning. They went to sleep when the sun went down. Okay, yeah, my mom's family's Irish, and I was raised on my mom's side of the family, so there was definitely some drinking, and that's how they managed their stress using a negative stress management tool. But overall, life was much simpler then. And now life is very, very, very complex. And so we have to look at all parts of a human to be able to figure out where is this state of dis-ease that they're locked into, where's it really coming from, right? Is it their relationship with their mom? Was it their relationship with their brother? Did they have a bully in third grade that altered their socialization? Like there's so many factors that go into figuring out what's really the root-based cause of some dramatic expression of disease. And so what I like to do is I like to investigate things. So I'm someone who, if I have a problem, I attack it from all sides. And I was like this since I was very young. And I'm close to 60 now. So when I'm moving through the world, I'm always taking all the lessons from all the things that I did in my life. And a lot of the big lessons I got was in the SEAL teams, was in SEAL training, right? And, you know, one of the things you learn about Navy SEALs is we're very consistent. Like you have the David Goggins of the world out there. You've got the Jocko Willinks. You've got me. And the one thing that you're going to find, we all have different messages. We come at it from a different angle. Jocko's about that extreme discipline. David is about conquering his mind and any bit of weakness. And I'm about supreme alignment, meaning my focus is on anything that takes you out of alignment is only useful for a little bit. And so when you're attacking anything that you want to do, you have to come at it from all sides. You got to look at your sleep. You got to look at your nutrition. You got to look at your breathing. You got to look at your relationships. You got to look at your motivations for the reason why you do the things that you do. You got to look at your faith. And so I'm always okay talking about God. Other people, that freaks people out. They're like, oh my God, I can't know.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because on my other podcast, if I talk, because some people, they lean on their faith. They go, I don't know, God told me to do this and this, and my life got better. And so other people say, we don't want to hear about that. We just want to hear about nutrition. Well, if your life's a disaster and you go, I'll just eat vegan, or I'll just eat carnivore, or I'll just eat, you got to fix the other problems. If you're drinking every night, you're not sleeping, you're fighting with everyone around you. All those things have a role in our physiology.
Yeah. And our mental health, but also our emotional health. Right. And so I created a business called True Body Intelligence. And what I've done is I've broken the body down into 4 sectors: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I like to delve into all of them to see, hey, maybe what this person needs is an increase in their emotional intelligence. Man, if we could just work on the emotional parts of your body, right? And the beautiful thing about the human body is all of the intelligence exists within it already. And all you have to do is reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load. And once you reduce that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start expressing higher forms of intelligence, either analytical intelligence, that's mental, emotional intelligence, which is feeling, spiritual intelligence, which is energetic, and physical intelligence, which is physiological, instinctual, or structural, right? And, once we break the body down into those 4 sectors, and then we go even deeper and we go, okay, well, where does the sense of freedom come from, right? Well, the Chinese and the Taoist monks that started creating traditional Chinese medicine, these guys spent time in caves meditating before meditating was a thing. Like, we can track back at least 5,000 years in their written history and find that these Taoist monks were in caves meditating and doing breath work and in deep prayer before we even knew prayer was a thing. And so, fortunate for us, they already had created systems, right? So they already understood the elements, how you're impacted by fire, the sun, how you're impacted by water, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, the streams, how you're impacted by the earth, how you're impacted by the trees, the roots, the branches, how you're impacted by the metal. And they created all of these systems that allow us to really understand human beings through excess, deficiency, hot, cold, And as you start looking and applying these maps over top of a human, you just start asking some basic questions and do just a basic investigation, you start to get really, really clear on what are the things that are keeping this person from being at peace. Because if I'm at peace in my heart, and I'm at peace in my mind, and I'm at peace in my body, and I'm at peace in my spirit, what does that mean? It means my mind is quiet, my energy is abundant, my body's strong and comfortable, and my emotions are grounded, right? But if I'm out of a state of peace, then it means there must be something that I'm doing on a consistent basis that's causing me to do that. And so, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, you could be drinking, could be smoking marijuana, you could be pounding on a bunch of sugar, you could be smoking, you could be taking pharmaceutical drugs that are contraindicated for each other. You could be taking recreational drugs, right? And I consider all of these to be negative stress management tools. And so how do we shift from negative stress management tools into positive stress management tools?
One thing I would just say is like, and you see that on social media when people attack, there's some people who just attack all the time. It's like, how much peace can that person possibly have? It's always intrigued me where someone will lose 100 pounds and they'll go, look at your loose skin. They don't say something positive. They pick out the negative all the time. And you wonder what they're like when they go to the grocery store, or what they're like in their interpersonal relationships at work and home and everything, just being out of balance like that.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about this is when I'm out of balance and I'm in chaos, everyone who's in my sphere of influence, I'm negatively affecting them. And what people forget is that when I'm sauced out on alcohol, well, everyone who comes in contact with me that day is being impacted by that base state change, right? If I get into a base state change of peace, every life that I touch gets more peaceful, right? So when I'm hopped up on nicotine and I'm stressed because I'm vaping or I'm on these 4-hour energy drinks, right? And I'm overamped, the way that I'm processing information, my filters have changed into a state of hyperactivity. And so for me, I think the most essential state to get into is a state of peace. And if I don't have peace with my parents, if I don't have peace with my partner, if I don't have peace with my children, if I don't have peace with my coworkers or my boss, well, if I have a bad relationship with my boss, well, that affects me when I go home. If I have a bad relationship with my wife, that affects me when I go to work. So all of these stem from having a positive relationship with yourself. But if you're hogging out on the daily acceptable drugs to attempt to manage your stress load because you want to feel some sense of normality, you're lying to yourself. Like you're living in fantasy. And in True Body Intelligence, in my work, I will only work with people who are in reality. And so the first step that I do is I get everyone off of all the daily acceptable drugs because I need their nervous systems to be calm and peaceful. And when your nervous system's calm and peaceful, guess what happens? You make good decisions. But when your nervous system is jacked up in stress and you're hypervigilant, you know what you make? You make bad decisions because when we feel good, we always do good. When we feel bad, we do bad, even though we want to be doing good.
Yeah, and I think that's true with fear. And I see how fear affects people. They don't think rationally. Go, wait, let me look at my and the one thing about Navy SEALs, my friends who are SEALs, is they're very. I mean, you picture like they're all like the guys who are out conquering the world and attacking. But you got most of my friends who are SEALs have been very very quiet. You wouldn't know they're SEAls necessarily. They're very at peace and calm. Like you don't want to play poker with these guys because you'll never they're not going to give facial expressions to you let you know what they got. And so I'm curious for you, like going back as a kid growing up, like what was your motivation to become a SEAL? Was it to prove something to yourself, to someone, to other people, or just to be a badass? Or what was your motivation for going into
I knew my motivation was I needed a challenge. You know, when I left, I went to a privately well-endowed boarding school in Hershey, PA for 10 years. And I went to college and I went to Shippensburg University. I probably should have picked a school that would have challenged me more mentally. I didn't. I went to that school because I was loyal to my coaches. And that was a disservice. But in the end, it actually helped me out because I got into a situation where I realized there's not enough stimulation here for me. And when you're neurally diverse, you need a lot of stimulation to really ground inside. And when I picked up this biannual magazine, on the cover was like 8 or 10 boat crews of guys running down the beach with telephone poles on their shoulders, grimacing faces. You can see they're putting out 110% of their effort. And as soon as I saw that picture, I was like, that's for me. These people are going to be able to challenge me. And that's what I wanted. And when I got there, I got exactly what I wanted. I got challenged, right? What I didn't think about was the cold weather, meaning the cold water. We spent a lot of time doing a process called surf torture. And look, the water might be 53 degrees. That might not seem like it's that cold, but when you spend hours in there, I don't mean you're going into like your cold plunge for your 90 seconds, right? I'm talking about living in there, right?
And sand and nastiness and salt water in your eyes and mouth and all that stuff.
Yeah, just all the time, all day long, every day. You know, that kind of stuff changes you and it just kind of wakes you up. And that was a challenge that I was unprepared for because I was very lean, super, super lean, like 1.8% body fat, like everywhere. I got sent off to a lab up at UCSD to do hydrostatic testing. And my body fat, they said basically I had no organ fat. They redid the test again and again and again and again and again because I'd spent so much time in cold water that my body was using every kind of resource that it had. And most people didn't know that when I was in SEAL training, I was primarily a vegetarian.
I'm just curious as an aside, did they ever check your cholesterol? Was it crazy when you were so lean? Because they're finding a lot of people who are super lean, their LDL cholesterol goes crazy high, trying to get an energy source.
No. They didn't. That might have been useful. I'm sure now they do all kinds of testing. Remember, I went through SEAL training in like 1990, 1991, 1992. So in that era, it was just like, here's some clothes, here's some boots, get on the beach, we're going to work.
Well, it's funny, you know, a friend of mine as a SEAL was telling me that they did testing on people and they could see as a SEAL who could predicting who was going to pass through the SEAL training. And they could tell by the way you metabolize stress hormones, your stress cortisol, all these stuff, that if you were going to make it through or not, they could predict pretty darn accurately. There's obviously a lot of other factors involved with mental toughness and, you know, physical strength and all those things. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. You know, I think it has to be obviously it's a special breed of someone who's going to go through all that. And I have to ask you, just out of my curiosity too, I'm sure other people are wondering, did you ever hit a point when you're going through that grueling training and getting yelled at and all those things that you go, this isn't worth it, I'm getting out?
No.
Like, I want to ring that bell and just go
get a
nice
cup of coffee. No, never. No, never. And I think probably that my mom was a very intense woman. And you know, my mom was no nonsense, you know, and she screamed and yelled and threw things. And, you know, my mom would punch you in the face. Like she was just like, she was no nonsense. So SEAL training was, I had her for my
step down.
Yeah. It was like a step down. So I had instructors that were like, they're like this close to you. They're yelling in your face. And I went to a boarding school for 10 years too. Right. So going to SEAL training was very easy for me in the sense that I already knew how to deal with those situations. I think kids that grew up in households that didn't have those kinds of stressors already, after like a couple weeks, they were like, I'm out of here because they didn't know how to cope. But I had to cope with high level stress from the moment I was born, right? I mean, they broke my legs on day 2 because I was born bow-legged and they reset them in cast, right? So imagine that was my day 2. So SEAL training was like, they're breaking my legs on day 2. Yeah, I can handle running down a beach with a telephone pole on my shoulder.
Yeah. Were there any lessons that you, like lifelong lessons that you got from your SEAL training And
I,
by the way, your book, is this your only book? Free for
yeah,
Life,
yeah,
Navy SEALs Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
So what was it?
Um,
What were those lessons that you got as a SEAL, like going through the training or being part of the team that you carry with you now that make you the man that you are?
I think the biggest thing I got out of SEAL teams was that there is no I in team, right? Like you have to understand that it takes a village to get anything done of value. And everyone that is participating is an equal member. And the thing about the SEAL teams is when you're on the SEAL team bases, there's no saluting. So you might be an officer, I might be enlisted. When we walk past each other, I'm not saluting you. And the reason why is because we're equals. And so there's just a certain level of respect. Everyone in the SEAL teams is given their own department. And I might be part of the hotel platoon, but in hotel platoon, I might be the primary communicator. So I'm part of a team, but I have my own job, right? And no one's looking over your shoulders in the SEAL team to see if you get things done. No one's holding your hand. Like you learn really quickly, like you either get things done right or there's consequences to pay. And the guys in the platoon are going to be the ones that give you the consequences. And so it's a no nonsense environment. And you've got to understand that safety is paramount in everything that you do. And so the fastest way to get kicked out of SEAL training is to get safety violations. Well, the only way to get a safety violation is if you're not focused. So a lot of guys in the SEAL teams are introverts. And I suspect a lot of the guys are neurally diverse and on the spectrum. And so we have an innate sense, an innate ability to focus, and we are able to use that environment to maximize our ability to focus. And the other thing in the SEAL teams is that there are no limitations. Meaning, I mean, I've been in Alaska, right, on a training op, and we're coming back from one of these islands in the Aleutian chain, and the sea state is 25 feet. Okay. And our little dinghies are barely getting up to the top of the wave and then, going down the front side. When we finally got in one night, we had one boat pulling 3 other boats, and there was only one motor working. And we were in the most hellish storm you could ever see for like 6 hours straight. Right. You know what I mean? Like yeah. So when you're in a position and everything is life and death, right? In the SEAL teams, you make a mistake, somebody dies, right? This is different than I go to work and I make a mistake. Okay, we might lose a couple dollars, right? Or maybe I spilled some coffee on someone's suit. No, we're talking about life and death. And so you come at life differently once you go through something like that. And so for me, whenever somebody's struggling through something that's small, I have all the confidence that they're going to be able to make it through that because I know what it's like to be in a life and death situation every single day. When you're coming out of a helicopter at 4 o'clock in the morning and they throw a rope down and you're sliding down that rope and you can't see the ground, right? It's you become supremely aware of your environment at all times. And so I'm always confident that I can make it through anything. Yeah, of course I'm human. Are there days when I have like a moment of doubt? But that moment of doubt might last like 2 or 3 seconds. And then I kind of get myself together and I move forward.
Yeah, and you can lean back and go, I'm not going through those waves that, in the dark in the middle of the night, freezing to death and everything, and not knowing how long you're going to be out there, all those kind of things. And part of that is, and I think in medicine it's the same thing, when we see trauma, like true trauma, and someone skins their knee, you go, okay, this isn't life or death. This is like you have a different perspective than other people might that don't deal with those things all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did that affect you? Like not necessarily having compassion, got like, come on, suck it up. Like, here's what I went through in your mind in a way, you think like,
No, I think for me, it's made me more compassionate because I understand that other humans haven't been through the extremes of training that I've been through. And so my heart always goes out to them, meaning I always have enough space for their failures because I understand. And you got to remember, in SEAL training, I classed up with class 177. And then I graduated with class 186. Okay. And I had a couple injuries, which are called injury rollbacks. And I failed, right? I went to Milton Hershey School where the founder, Milton Snavely Hershey, he failed 3 times before he had success. And so the story of failure was interwoven into my understanding of the value of failure. And so when people are failing around me, I'm always there to encourage them. I'm always there to remind them.
And I respect that about you. And I think you, like we were talking about technical difficulties, you go, hey, it's real life. Not everything's perfect. You can't have it all glossed and clean and everything's perfect, right? We had some technical stuff we had to move around and all those kind of things. So you start realizing, yeah, it's not, and the SEALs, I think especially you learn that it's like things aren't going to go as planned. Something weird's going to happen. You have to be ready for contingency plans and go, okay,
Yeah.
it didn't work the way it should have, but here's how we adapt to that.
Yeah, and I adjust on the fly. And okay, yeah, every once in a while I'm a little pissed that the flight's been changed, right? I'm at the airport and I got to sit here for 4 hours. And I'm not someone who just sits around, right? I'm always like moving from one thing to the next thing. I'm a little bothered, but in the end, you know, through my faith, I always see that there was a bigger purpose behind this delay. And I get to the place of going, okay, Christopher, let go. You can't be bothered and pissed off at the airline. This is a waste of energy.
Yeah, it's like, not, you can't fix it. So you go, okay,
you can't fix it.
You go, okay, how do we make the best of the situation, right?
Yeah, I don't have control. So what can I do with my time that'll be beneficial, right? So I just throw on my backpack. Usually my backpack that I carry with me weighs about 40 pounds. And I just throw it on my back and I walk around the airport the entire time. If delayed 4 hours, I'm going to walk for 4 hours.
You get your workout in, get your cortisol levels down.
Yeah.
I
awesome. Just walk and relax and walk and relax. And I'm people walking by like, did we just see this guy like 45 minutes ago? And I just keep on walking and I just keep moving. You know, SEAL training in the SEAL teams was a unique opportunity. And when I was out of that environment, I was ready to move on into a different phase of my life. And
was it a hard transition for you going from the intensity of the SEALs to?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was hard in the sense that in the SEAL teams, it's a brotherhood. So we work all day, but then we hang out together at night. And then I was out of the SEAL teams, but I was still hanging out with my buddies who were in the SEAL teams. So even though I wasn't in the SEAL teams, I was still living my life as if I was in the SEAL teams socially. And I got a DUI when I was 27, and that turned all that around. And I said, okay, I called up all my buddies in SEAL teams. I said, look, if you're calling me up because you want to go drinking, you want to party, you got to lose my number. I'm done. And I turned my life in a completely different direction. Wow. And so once I stopped socializing at that level, then my focus was on my wellness and my growth and figuring out how does a 27-year-old guy who's been living his dream end up in a drunk tank downtown San Diego in a cell with a bunch of people who are like out of their minds, wasted. Fortunate for me, I popped 0.08, so I was sober enough to be able to take in the experience and the stark contrast of the cold cell, the bars, making the loud noise when it shut, clink. And I remember looking across at these 5 gentlemen. I remember thinking, man, these guys are like almost 60, right? They're in their 50s. How the hell could they be here at that age? And I heard a little voice said, Christopher, let's not put yourself above them. If you don't get your shit together, this will be you at 55 years old.
Yeah.
And the stark contrast of me being social to 2 hours later being in that environment was a major wake-up call. And I said, okay, that's definitely not going to be me at 55. There's a reason why this is happening. They tested me again. I was sober enough to go home. I went home. I had a 2-hour conversation in the mirror with myself. And at that point, Spirit just wanted me to call my aunt. I called her. I said, look, I got a DUI. I told her all about it. And she said, Christopher, of course you did. You come from a family of alcoholics. And I'm thinking, a family of alcoholics? Why is she calling them alcoholics? They just drink. Mm-hmm. But she goes, you only know them when you came home for vacations. You don't know the other things that they struggle with. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I come from a family of alcoholics. Oh, maybe I'm an alcoholic. And it was in my environment, and I didn't see it that way. And then the way they do things in San Diego, if you get a DUI, you have to go to a mandatory amount of AA meetings. And then they make you take this college course at like Southwestern Community College, where you have to take a course on understanding the effects of alcohol. And I was watching these videos, it's like a 3-hour class every Tuesday and Thursday night. I was watching these videos. I was like, oh, yes, I drink and I black out. Oh, yes, I've done that. Mm-hmm. And then once I started realizing that this is historical and it doesn't have anything to do with me, in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to let my history, my lineage determine my life outcome. And then I got away from all those things.
Yeah, and that was life-changing for you and life-saving for you, probably,
yeah.
Right? When you're living the hard, fast life. And then how about going back? Was like growing up, was faith in something that was important to you, or was that through SEAL faith training, or how did that mold your life?
Faith was important for me. I always felt good in church. I always loved being in chorus and choir, right? Singing for the church. And I always loved the messages. I base a lot of how I live my life on all those messages that I was indoctrinated into when I was going to church. Like, I went to church every Sunday from 3rd grade till I graduated from high school, every Sunday. I only missed maybe once or twice. So I rinse and repeat, right? And every year the messages, they were the same messages, but I think they went a little deeper. You hear things again and again and again and again, and they start to make sense. And
something that didn't mean anything, you see something like a scripture, you go, oh, now that means something. Before I thought that was a dumb script. Then you realize that's how it applies, right? So we see through our life experience, things change, our perspective of it.
Yeah, and I've just always taken the ones that were universal to me, meaning they applied to everyone, regardless of how old they were, or how insightful they were, or how wise they were. And it's things like, God helps those who help themselves. And I was like, oh, you mean I can't just pray and things come to me? I actually have to put the effort forward, right? Knock and the door shall be open. Oh, so I need to ask, right? I need to inform that this is important to me. Ask and you shall receive, right? These basic ones that I've molded my life to those things. And those are the things that are really important to me.
How about in the SEALs? Was faith, were most guys of faith, or most guys weren't? Or what was your take just on your teams that you worked with? Or was it not talked about?
I mean, one, it wasn't talked about. 2, there were guys, like I had a really amazing guy in my platoon. who was a faith-based guy, and he didn't participate in all the other things, right? When everyone was going out, he was in reading his Bible and, paying attention to scripture, and he was an amazing human, right? So there's just like, he's a stellar expression of what can happen to you when you embody your faith, right? And his faith was non-negotiable. And he said to me one day, I said, hey, we're going out tonight. And he said, oh, you know me. And I said, yeah, I know you, but come on. Like, we've been on deployment for 6 months. You got to come out once. And he said, let me tell you something. I love my wife and I love my kids. So you go have a good time. Mm. And that always stuck with me. I said, ooh, he loves his wife and he loves his kids. So he's never going to abandon his faith, because he understands what he values most is his family. And he knows that if he goes out, there's a potential for him to compromise or to put his love and his faith at risk. And he's never going to put himself in an environment where he could compromise his faith. And that for me stood out. I remember where I was standing. I remember what I was wearing. Like, that was one of those moments that crystallizes in your mind. But for me, a moment where God wants you to know this has value. Listen to this.
Yeah. And maybe even at the second you don't appreciate it, then the more you think about it and reflect on it, go, man. And, Ben Bickman, who's one of the big guys in the low carb community and, expert on fat metabolism, all that stuff. We were in a big meeting and he goes, guys, my kid has a soccer game at this time. So we're in the middle of a huge discussion. He goes, okay, I'm out. It's all like televised everywhere and everything. Goes like, I'm out. I'll see you guys next time. Good luck. Good luck with but that, where he stands. And I respect him for that, saying, hey, look, my family, I gave my commitment and nothing is more important than that. Yeah. And so those kind of things. So for true body intelligence, like, what are you doing? Who are you working with? It sounds like you want people off the substance for sure, but who's your perfect client that's going to come to you for coaching and for assistance?
My perfect client is someone who's tried everything and none of the things that they've tried have worked for them. Yet they've been diligent. Like, they have a solid relationship with faith. They're willing to work hard. They're aware of their inner deficiencies and their insecurities. So they're inwardly and outwardly honest. And they want to move beyond their struggle. And they want to have success. And if what you want is you want to have success with the thing that you're struggling with, and you've already put in all the other time and energy and effort and all those other things, then I'm your guy. But if you want to play around and like put your toe in the water, I'm not your person. I'm the person for people who really want to get squeezed the most out of their life experience. And some of these people, they're professional athletes, some are CEOs, some are politicians, some are MDs, surgeon generals, people that are high ranking politicians, like people who are playing a really big game. And then there's people who are on the other side of the spectrum that are like a single mom, right? And their daughter's suffering from an eating disorder, and everything that they're doing is producing very little return on investment in terms of time, energy, effort, resources. And they're about to break, completely lose faith. And they find me. And I help them put themselves back together. Because tension is tension. There's no substitute for the things that I'm talking about. You can't pray yourself into the removal of tension. It doesn't work that way. You can't meditate into the removal of tension. This tension that's in your body is 14 generations old. And from my research, I've done over 100,000 hours of practical research. Whether they're 7 years old or 77 years old, they have the same patterns, which means they're born into this stress state.
Yeah,
No
they call it
question.
like generational sin or generational stress, where things are
Yeah.
passed down and down. And there's
Down.
studies on that actually
Yeah.
from the Holocaust in the Jewish communities. Like this stress gene got passed down to great
Well,
great great great. Great.
yeah. 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 The G, there's a G coupled receptor that's turned off because of that stress gene. And it makes it very difficult. It's interesting because in Los Angeles, the majority of my clients are Ashkenazi Jew,
Hmm.
right? And so that stress gene that's turned off is what's creating a lot of problems for them. So then the question is, how do we start to reboot the system from the ground up so that their body, their brain, and nervous system is interpreting their reality as a safe place to come from? Because when your body, brain, and your nervous system is perceiving your reality as a fearful place to come from, then you're locked into an inappropriate stress state. And once you're locked into that state and you reinforce that behavior through your thought patterns, you get locked down deeper into that state. And then the way that you know you're deep into that state is you end up with some kind of strange disease that no one else in your family's ever had, right?
Yeah, autoimmune disease. We see it a lot of gut problems, all these things. And I love that you're. I'm gonna have you back, and we could talk for an hour on this stuff because it's so important. I mean, one of the things, the first time I heard about it, they talk about adverse childhood events, and you look at
Yes.
it, it's going to shorten your life by 20 years on average, and
Well,
increase risk of
yes.
cancers, and you name it,
Yes.
across the board. And
Yeah.
how many people just don't realize that they're just walking around on this, like their car alarms going off, this hyper stress, this hyper like the world's out to get you all the time, instead of saying, that's the difference between a deer walking through to eat and a lion. Lion's not freaked out by everything, they just are at peace. And the
Yes.
deer's like, every noise are like, oh, someone's gonna kill me in a minute.
Yeah. So stress states that are passed off through the lineage are part of your lifetime accumulated stress load. But then there's the stress load that you've created from your own experiences and your misinterpretation of events as a child. Because when you look at a child's brain as it's developing, the first 7 years is your precognitive subconscious development. And then from 7 to 13, you've got your precognitive unconscious development. And what that means is your parents' unconscious and subconscious stress patterns get mimicked and embedded into every child's nervous system. And then the child at 13, when the charge on the water molecules changes from negative to positive, and they start going through becoming their own self, now they've got to get through all of their parents' inner deficiencies, insecurities, fears, and limiting beliefs to figure out how they can become their own person.
And negative coping mechanisms too, right? Like
Yes.
food or drugs or alcohol or video games,
Yeah.
whatever it might
And
be.
like whatever the strategy is that they apply. And from my assessment, the easiest strategy for people to apply is to be people pleasing. Because when you're a people pleaser, what you're avoiding is punishment, rejection, humiliation, discomfort, and violence. What you're giving up is an opportunity to have your voice in the world because you don't want to disturb anyone. And so in True Body Intelligence, what we focus on is getting someone supremely honest. Because when you're inwardly honest and you're outwardly honest, you're allowing everyone around you to be impacted by the truth of who it is you really are, which is a pure, clear, direct, divine reflection of God's love, light, laughter, and presence. Mm. And if you can be that, that means all the nervous systems around you are going to come into an immediate state of peace and calm whenever they're in your sphere. And so we want to get someone's nervous system into supreme balance. So we got to get their brain and their nervous system out of fight or flight. That's the first step.
And your secrets to that, like we talked about a little bit beforehand, that would be controlling your breathing. What other things do you like, as tools, like sauna, jacuzzi, those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your archetype, right? Some people, heat is great for them. Other people, cold is terrible, right? So I learned going through SEAL training that I can handle a little cold, but an intense amount of cold every day is terrible for me. And if you look into Chinese medicine, what they figured out is that the kidneys and the spleen abhor the cold, meaning they start losing function. Well, it's interesting in traditional Chinese medicine. Guess what organ controls the joints? The kidneys. What organ controls the fascia? The spleen. So if your fascia gets restricted and tight, and your joints get constricted and tight, those two together, from experiencing excessive cold, you're going to have a body full of pain. And so for people who are already in what I would call a cold stress state versus a hot stress state, they need warmth. Instead of getting into a cold plunge, they need to get into a hot bath, right? I had a guy who called me. He was a senior chief in the SEAL teams, and he was suffering all kinds of joint issues and stuff. And I said, look, the number one thing you can do is get into a hot bath every night for 25 minutes. And within a short amount of time, he was able to start to make big breakthroughs by simply getting into hot water. So if you're someone who spent a lot of time in cold water, you're a swimmer or you're a surfer, you need to do the opposite, right? And if you spend a lot of time in like the hot desert, right? Well, then you probably need to be cooled down. And so cooling is going to be good
balances.
For you to get those balances out. But if you're just like hopping into a cold plunge, you can do that for 4 or 5 years, but it's going to come with a cost eventually. It's going to come with a cost eventually. So because the body can only handle so much cold. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Korean 8 body type diet.
I have.
You have, because the Koreans have done some fascinating research.
Yeah.
And in their research, every human has 2 organs that are larger than the rest and 2 that are smaller than the rest in terms of their primary organs. And so for me, I'm what's called a hepatonia. So heat is very good for me. Cold is horrible. So all the problems that I had in my body mostly stem from SEAL training. And then
plus being under the intense stress and that cortisol drive, having to overcome that too at time.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't help, but the bigger issues really were the cold, because that was the biggest stressor that I was dealing with. Loud noises, sure, I don't like those. Intense physical activity, sure, that's fine. But cold water for me, at a physiological level, was like being in hell.
Yeah, well, that's new information. That's great, because I always hear that where you have a compensatory, like if you go in the cold water, you have a compensatory lowering of cortisol, or intense exercise short term, then you get this compensatory calming of the nerves afterwards, or going through heat shock proteins through sauna or whatever mechanism you're using. So it's really interesting. And I think there's so much, and I wish we could merge our Chinese medicine, traditional medicine, and allopathic, because the reality is allopathic medicine's turned into this, you have a 5-minute, 10-minute visit. Here's pills. See us next time. Right.
Yeah.
And we forgot this. How's life? Are you breathing? Do you have some downtime? And like we talked about at the beginning, you're talking about for thousands of years doing meditation and prayer. And all of a sudden, if you do that now, you're kind of an oddball. They go, you're wasting time. Like, well, you got to be efficient. You got to get more, on your cell phone, right? Because if you sit there and I've been through that as a doc, working all these years, there was times where I go, okay, I don't have time to go sit and play with the dog because I got too much stuff to do. And so many people are on this chronic overdrive, even if they're not necessarily stressed. I've seen it where people go on vacation for a week and their sugar's normalized, even though they're not eating the best foods. They're calming that chronic stress state. So, finding this inner peace, I think, like you talked about, is such a huge thing. It's huge. It's worth way more than money, right?
Sure. Yeah, I tell others the one thing that you can't buy is peace.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you've worked hard and you have access to resources, you went to school, you got a great education, none of that will ever be a substitute for peace. Because when your nervous system is in a state of stillness and peace, it's very easy to hear God. But when your nervous system's the opposite, in a complete stress state, then it's very difficult to hear those bigger voices that are here really to guide you and help you, right? Just to nudge you. Okay, I think you need to turn left now, right? But if you can't hear that, next thing you come around the corner, you're like, oh my God, look at all this traffic here. But if you would have listened to that little voice that said, no, turn right now, you could have avoided all of that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that too, because I was thinking like a lot of times I've had some of my most powerful spiritual experiences when I do volunteer work overseas, like in Guatemala, El Salvador, Vietnam. And I was thinking like, God, why is it that like I don't see these experiences at home in the US? And the message basically was like, you're too distracted all the time. I'm telling you all the time, you just don't listen.
Yeah.
Right. You get up and you're on a schedule and nothing, you don't see that guy over there who is in need or someone with a flat tire because you're like late for your meeting. So I think all those kind of things of finding that peace, I think that's probably of all the messages, I think that's a huge one. And I think so many people have this perception that Navy SEALs are just like warriors and but having that, you have to have that peace. I think Jocko was one that was talking about like being as a sniper, completely focused on the target, but aware of everything else going on at the same time, and not just saying, I'm just looking at that. Then you get shot from someone else when you're totally focused and not aware of your environment.
Yeah. And, to add to that, when you're in peace, everything slows down. When you're out of peace, everything speeds up. And so, when we look for Christians, right, when you look into the world and you look at their spiritual pathway, their leader was Yeshua, right? Well, what did they call him?
Prince of Peace.
There you go.
Yeah.
So if you're a Christian or you're Muslim or like whatever your faith is, for me, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is, are you embodying the high qualities of the ascended master that you're following, right? And so if Jesus is your guy and they called him the Prince of Peace, probably what he meant when he said, you shall do things greater than I, is, well, the only way you can do that is if you get into peace first, because that's the place where I'm coming from. I'm coming from peace.
Yeah.
So if you get to peace and now you're implementing all the insights that I gave you, now you can do things greater than I. Yeah, but if you don't get to his base state, which was peace, then how are you ever going to see what's truly important? And so the question is, how can the listeners get in peace? These are basic steps, right? One, whatever daily acceptable drug that you're addicted to, I don't care if it's caffeine, nicotine, pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, marijuana, like I know that's an acceptable daily drug now. You got to get off all that stuff. Your mind has got to be at peace. Then you're going to have to find someone that you can talk to about the things that you have hidden in your closet. So if you got anger with your mom, you got anger with your dad, you got anger with your brother, or you feel fearful of your boss, whatever the situation is, you got to find somebody to talk to on a semi-regular basis. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be at least a friend. Okay? Then you've got to figure out what are the sleep patterns that are going to work for you. And you got to stick to those. Like you've got to protect your sleep no matter what is going on. If your husband snores and he's waking you up every hour, go sleep in a guest room. Okay? If your wife is waking you up because she moves all night long, go sleep in the guest room. Okay? 4 or 5 nights a week. Make sure you have energy. All right? 2, get away from processed food. All right? Yeah, they're fun to snack on. I like chewing on crispy things like chips and cookies, right? I kind of grew up with those things, okay? Yeah, you can have it. That's fun every once in a while. But at the end of the day, you have to eat whole food. If you can eat whole food, if you get off the daily acceptable drugs, you have someone you can talk to about the things that are stressing you out, and you're getting consistent sleep, you're going to be able to start to access peace on a semi-regular basis. And when you're in that state, it's going to be very clear what decisions you need to make about your life financially, faith wise, support wise, education wise. And now that you have an abundant amount of energy in your peaceful state, your mind is calm and relaxed, you're eating good quality food, you're going to start to have better opportunities for you professionally and personally. You and your wife are going to get along better. You and your kids are going to get along better. You and your coworkers are going to get along better. And you're going to have more consistent investment in your faith. And if you can get those things working, those are just basic steps. You can build a really good life for yourself.
Amen, man. I mean, you got it. I was going to ask you what's life's best medicine, but I think I have the answer. So, what would you say for you? What's life's best medicine that gets you motivated? Where do you go when things get hard? Going through tough times in life.
Um,
what gets you going?
I don't really go through tough times. So, and the reason why I don't go through tough times is because I'm very consistent with my practice, right? So those things might seem tough to other people, but they seem very easy to me. But to answer your question, what is my go-to? My go-to is quiet time, right? Just having some time to be messing around in my house doing nothing, right? In the closet, straightening things, right? Washing the dishes, but in quiet, no noise. The water fountain's going on in the background. That's easy for me. The other thing too for me is instruments, right? I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, I'm a guitar player, electric and acoustic. I'm a piano player. So getting time to do that. But the other thing that I really like, and I'm sure some people are going to relate to this, I like to go to the movies. I go to a movie by myself. I sit all the way in the back and I just check out. Because I don't have to focus on me. I don't have to focus on helping anyone else. I just get to lay back and be enthralled by this story. And if I get some time to do that, I get to decompress. So
Awesome,
a good
man.
movie, some quiet time, and playing music. So solitude.
Very important. I mean, so many of us miss out on that solitude, just being quiet and observing, watching birds. I was out pulling weeds this morning. I'm like, a whole flock of geese went over. I was like, man, I'm a San Diego guy, but right now I'm in Arizona in the mountains. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Just having that little bit of peacetime too.
Yeah.
So if people want to track you down, how do they find you? How do they get your book? I'll put links to everything in
Yeah. I
in
mean,
the show notes.
they want to track me down. Read my book. That's simple. Free for Life, a U.S. Navy SEAL's Unique Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. And you go to truebodyintelligence.com, right? There's enough information in there to sort of pique your interest. But really, as soon as you open the web page, my book is going to be sitting in front of you. Download the audio file because it's a much better transmission for me to read it to you, because the emotional inflections in my voice are going to give importance to different sections. And I think it's going to be much more personal. That'll be powerful.
It's on Audible.
No, I don't.
How do we get to that?
The audio files on truebodyintelligence.com.
Awesome.
I don't participate with those companies that don't give fair and equitable exchange to the authors. So I created my own membership portal. I did everything. Yeah, it cost me a lot of money, and I probably will never make that money back. But ethically, I can't participate with companies that rob from authors. It just doesn't feel good to me.
No doubt. I know a lot of authors, they all say the same thing. It's just such a grind. So Hey everyone, you got a bunch of free wisdom here today. This is like platinum level, like really important stuff. Oh, Christopher, go ahead.
I do have one other thing. If you
Yes.
go to Instagram, Christopher Lee Maher, I give a download every other day that's about a minute or 3 minutes long, right? I
Awesome.
give you some insight about something. And I think that's the place to go because, and it's different than me giving you just inspiration because I think inspiration is nice. Oh, there's butterflies. Okay. There's a flock of geese. Cool. And sometimes you just need information. And then once you have the insight and have the information, now you can make an informed choice. So I do inspiration and education. And then in a couple months, I'll probably be teaching transmutations, and you'll be able to do these in the freedom of your home at cost. I mean, that meaning there's no cost. And I will help you light up your body, help you light up your energy, help you calm down your nervous system, help you get better sleep by implementing these transmutations, which would be super beneficial for you.
Awesome stuff, everyone. Again, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, take in this and find your peace. I mean, that's what's going to keep you away from us, from medical care and a bunch of drugs and all that kind of stuff. Having that peace to go to sleep at night when you lay down and not have to take a drug to that, or peace to wake up in the morning and look forward to your day. There's nothing more valuable. Trust me, I've been
Nothing more
around here
valuable.
a long time. So Christopher, what a blessing. Thank you so much for joining me,
Thank you.
and keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you, brother.
I'll be a new follower.
Awesome. That's exciting.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.